Hi guys and welcome to my channel. So this is going to be part one of my April book haul, and the entire part will be devoted to books about France. We went to France as part of the Easter holidays, which is like 3 days. And this is the first time we actually went to France, not to other parts of Europe via France. So to France, we just decided to just drive around Normandy and discover bits and bobs. So we have purchased some of the books around the region, and we actually managed to go and see quite a few things in the time we spent there. And I think I might start with the Bayeux. So we went to see the very famous Bayeux Tapestry, which was really good. I fully enjoyed it. So we got 3 books in the museum, and this one is in 2 languages, so it's in French and in English. And what it does, and it has a really weird format. This one, it goes through the tapestry, so the region by region, section by section, so it tells you the different symbolic meanings behind it, and it walks you through individual scenes in 2 languages. So if you are into embroidery, if you like stitching, the history of stitching, I think this was one of the better books I have seen, because it's just so detailed and you can study the close-ups at your own time, which for me was quite good, because while we were there were no proper tours, so you can borrow one of those audio guides, and I really dislike them, but I don't know why, but I really dislike them. And there were so many people just wanted to see it, and you go into the dark room. It's a rather large tapestry, so it just bends around the room, and it's dark outside, and then you have glass in front of it. It's all illuminated. So I thought I'll get a book and I can study more about it, because as you know, I do a bit of cross stitch, I do a bit of embroidery. Then this is the other one. This is just in English, and this is written by Professor Monet. It's called the Bayeux Tapestry, and this one is mostly about the history, so the different themes, historical themes, which are mentioned in the tapestry, because this is like the first official poster. It's a propaganda, if you don't know anything about this. If you don't know anything about it, then the Bayeux Tapestry is known because it's the oldest and the longest survival tapestry we have about a particular event. So it was done by French embroiderers, and it describes the successful for the French military operation when they went and conquered England, Great Britain, well, England at the time, in 1066. Sort of preceding events and what happened after while they were in England. So it's a big chunk of European history covered beautifully in this original stitching, which is now called the Bayeux stitching, which looks a little bit like a crochet, but it's done with the needle. And you have several books if you're interested in tapestry, and there was a shop, so you can go and purchase the kits. This is the map, so you can see where the invasion took place, and here is the royal family tree, because the French actually did have the legitimate claim on the British throne. They were part of the same family. And then the final book I have purchased, so this is written by Pierre Bouillot and François Neveu, also called the Bayeux Tapestry, correct me if I'm wrong, and this one specializes in individual motifs. So there are some weird and wonderful creatures, and there are some actual animals which exist in nature mentioned in the tapestry. And it tells you about the stitching as a work of art, the technology behind it, a little bit more about the history. So basically the 3 books are within the same theme, but as I mentioned, I do like embroidery, so to me that held a special interest. And then we have 1 book in French. I could not find this in English, but to be honest, like, I can understand a little bit of French, and that's enough to get this book. This is published by the Ministry of Culture, the French Ministry of Culture, and what it does, it splits country into different regions, and within a given region it shows you the different houses of prominent people, so people who were poets, writers, composers, architects, scientists. Even Christian Dior house is in there. For example, this is the house of Émile Zola, so if you are interested in his biography, you can visit the house. It tells you where the house is, the opening times, any interesting information. So what I personally found useful is this map at the back, which shows you the France divided into separate regions, and it shows you on the map where different bits are. So we went to Normandy, and within the Normandy, up in the north, there are quite a few houses. So we went to see the Monet house, and I absolutely loved it. I mean, I knew I was gonna love it, but I have not realized how much I'm gonna love it. So yeah, this book is only in French, and I have not seen this on Amazon or online, but I've seen it when we went to Saint-Michel in the museum, and I just like, I need to buy it for the future referencing. It is pretty good. So that's how it looks, divided into different regions, and shows you the prominent authors. While we are on the theme of houses, I'll just show you the two books we purchased when we visited the Monet house. I love Impressionists. It's one of my favorite styles, if not my favorite style, although I quite like abstract painting as well. I do like Impressionists, so I do love Claude Monet, and I was like adamant that if we have a chance, I would like to go and visit his house. It is about 40-45 kilometers away from Paris, so we basically went almost to Paris. It's quite close, but it is in Normandy, and if you are traveling to Paris, you can go on a daily trip on a bus, and you go into this village. The entire village is now have been converted into Impressionist heaven, I suppose. It's like a fake village. It has huge parking. You just drive in there, and you can spend the whole day. So you can visit Monet house, Monet's famous gardens, and his ponds. If you like his work, you know he drew hundreds and hundreds of versions of his lily pond, so you can visit the actual pond. And then there is Expressionist Museum, so you can see the work done by his followers, because once he got established in his house, he opened it to other artists to come and visit, so there's lots and lots of other artists' work. We didn't get a chance to go and see the museum, so that's for the next visit. My advice would be, if you're planning on going, go online. I know it's in French, but if you Google it, you can find detailed ways of how to purchase a ticket if you don't speak French, step by step. The reason behind it is, if you don't book a ticket in advance, you will queue, and you will queue for at least 30 minutes, if not longer. The queue is humongous, and French people smoke profusely. Compared to Brits, they smoke a lot, and it's really irritating because you are in a queue and you can't leave, and they're just standing there puffing away, having a bit of a fag, and you're like in your face. So if you're not into that, I highly recommend you book in advance, because if you do book in advance, you could just go straight through. If you don't book, there are literally like one person in the window, and it's super slow. Once you get through, if you have the ticket, you have to queue inside, because you have to queue to go into the house, and then you have to queue to go into the garden, and through the garden, via the underground passageway, you go under the road, and you reach the pond. And it was absolutely heaving with tourists. It is basically Oxford Street. It's really, really, really busy. We did not get a chance to get into the house. It was just too much. We probably queued for about 45 minutes, and it was running quite late. We had a tunnel to get back to, so we got into the garden, walked through the garden, and went to see the pond. It was worth the wait, in my opinion. The garden was absolutely spectacular. I definitely would love to go back and spend more time in there. But you're constantly being pushed from all directions. There are all of those tourists who would like to take the same pictures you do, and you never get a chance to really experience it by yourself with the peace and quiet. But the garden work and the flower work done by gardeners is absolutely spectacular. Everything is so color coordinated, and I bet that depending on the season you go, you will feel it completely differently, because we went, as I mentioned, early April, so it was tulip season. End of tulip season, you had wisteria, you had lots of peonies, and I love purple, so it was a lot of purple. It was just gorgeous. But if you go before that, I guess if you go in March, and they do open in March, you will see more of the other flowers. And if you go later, you probably have poppies, and then they move on to the summer, so you probably will have roses. So as the seasons progress, the flowers and bloom will also change, and they must employ hundreds of helpers and several main gardeners, because every square, like every inch, every centimeter of that garden is well thought through and well designed. So I have purchased 2 books while I was there, and they're both devoted not to Monet, but to the gardens. So the first one is called Monet at Givenchy. Givenchy is the village, and this is written by Andrea Goetz and photographed, and this is how it looked when we went. So that was the season. This is what it's gonna look like later in the summer. So in this book, they tell you about why he purchased the house, how he moved there, how the environment he lived in influenced his work. It has really pretty pictures of the garden. It has pictures like how the garden looks like and what he drew. And he used to play with light, as you know, Impressionism is all about capturing that light. More of the ponds. I just wanted to see the ponds, so for me that was a trip worthwhile. Claude Monet was himself a very keen gardener, and therefore he did invest heavily in developing his garden. It's not that he just hired people. This is the inside of the house if you end up going in the house tour, which I have to say I would love to do. You can see the traditional kitchen, it's still there. It's just gorgeous. You have his family tree. So that's book number 1. And the book number 2 is the one I'm the most excited about. I actually really want to read it. It's called Monet's Garden for the Seasons at Givenchy. And this is a must-have, I guess, if you are a gardener, because it literally shows you step by step how they look after the garden, how they plan it, how they design it. It has lots and lots of text. I just want to find the spread to show you. Like what species, what varieties of flowers are there, how they group them. So this is Autumnal Glory. I would love to go. I would love to visit it now every single season because it's just amazing. Look, this is just a reproduction of his painting, how he saw it when he lived there. And I guess it hasn't changed that much. The idea is to keep it as preserved as possible, try to maintain the same color schemes he had enjoyed himself. Look at this, look at the close-up of the pond. It's just so beautiful. And they also show you how it looks like in the morning and with the morning light, how it looks in the afternoon. There's going to be lots and lots of painters, amateur painters if you go in. It's worth a visit. I think it's the 3rd most visited place in France. So the first is Eiffel Tower, then you have Versailles, the 3rd one is Mont Saint-Michel, and then you have the Monet house. So we've been to Saint-Michel and now we've been to this garden. So this is the spring season when we went, and it was just, honestly, I live in England, as you know, and English people are really known for the gardens. And a lot of people, when they come to England, they're really disappointed by the English gardens because they go like, oh, it's really simple. But there's a difference in culture. So we call it the French garden and the English garden. So the French garden being very structured one, where you have very cut herbs, everything is divided geometrically. And then the English garden is the complete opposite. It's supposed to represent the wilderness, so to speak. So you go in and it looks like unkept and just wild in a natural state. But those of you who garden will realize just how much work goes into that garden, trying to create an illusion of it being into the wild. So the Monet garden was like a bridge between the two. I can appreciate just how much work, how much gardeners' work went into creating it, and yet it's not as structured and planned out as the typical French garden would be. So yes, this book is great. And then the last 3 books are all about Normandy. So we got Michelin Normandy Green Guide, just basic info, and I find it really plain. There's very little of useful information in there, so it's a bit of a waste. Second from the last is a sightseeing in Normandy. We bought in Rouen. Rouen, like you have like slightly vomit in your mouth to make that sound. And that's the city where Monet drew the Rouen Cathedral. So it's quite a well-known region. So the book is nice. It has lots of photographs of architecture. This I found more useful. Maybe because I do like the visual, but I also have the rough guide, the visual one to France, and I prefer this one. So you have Arnay, you have Calvados. The whole Calvados region is really, really pretty. If you like Camembert, if you like cheese, then Normandy is your region. You can just go to any, if you like food, you can just go and purchase anything. And I have to say, for me, the big thing, which I did not, well, two things I did not expect. Number one, I have not realized just how much the French smoke, and that they would have a tobacco shop in every single tiniest village. And the second one, and I regret not playing with it, I have seen a vending machine for baguettes. I have never seen a vending machine which disperses baguettes. So now I'm curious, does it give you warm baguette or does it give you a cold one? And we've seen that along the way in the tiny villages where they did not have the boulangerie, where they didn't have the fresh baguettes. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. It's quite different from United Kingdom, I have to say, even though they separated just by one small channel, and the scenery of the nature are very, very similar in Normandy and East Anglia. And then the final book, I was obsessed with visiting the Mont Saint-Michel. So when we went there were lots and lots of books, but the vast majority of books I liked were in French, and there is no English translation. So I've purchased this, and I have read this book already. And this is just about the place, the island, how it was built over time, and then the actual, it used to be monastery, now cathedral, and a tiny village. I would recommend, if you are visiting this place, go on a tour, because we went on a 2-hour tour, which gave me more information than this entire book. The book is a very rough translation. It looks like someone just typed French into Google Translate and it just produced this. It has lots of pretty pictures. If you would like to keep nice pictures, then the book is better than taking yours, because it is a busy place. About a third of all the tourists who get there actually manage to walk all the way up and see the church. The vast majority of people, somehow they get to the island and they just go and eat, or they buy souvenirs, which is a bit of a waste in my opinion. Like, if you go there, just go up. This picture has been taken before they have built the road, so there is now a path, so you can either walk, and it takes like literally 15 minutes to walk, it's really, really pleasant, or you can go on a free bus, which is very slow, or you can pay and go on a horse cart. And when you get there, you walk to the bottom, so you walk upwards in a spiral through all of the different restaurants and through the souvenir shops. My advice would be just go straight upstairs, because you need to catch the tour, and the whole infrastructure in the church closes at 5, so make sure you go on the tour before, and then you can like stay there until 10, have dinner and stuff. If you go into the church, you can go with the tour, like they show you downstairs and the upstairs and what used to be hospital, and at the side, which they call the Wonder Room, we had different floors for nobility on the top, and there are 2 kings who visited. So Philip the Beautiful has visited this place, for example, and they tell you the tour. And we had tour in English, and the guide was clearly French, and he was excellent. Like, he knew his stuff inside and out. He was super, super helpful, and I just recommend you go on a tour rather than look into the books. And then the one regret I have is if you leave the island, you go through a village which is quite close to it, like a small city, not a village, and it has the Museum of Books, which was closed because it was around Easter, and it was actually, we went on the day before the Mass on Easter Day, so the museum was closed, it was too late. But if you planning a visit there, I will highly recommend you go and visit the city next to this Mont Saint-Michel, because you can see some 15th and 16th century manuscripts. And the Mont Saint-Michel was really known for its manuscripts. They had 25 specialized scribes, and they would produce really beautifully written with gold-plated books. I would love to go to the Museum of Books. Maybe we will go and visit one more time. The whole region I will highly recommend. If you like World War II, so you can visit the Normandy landing site, you can see the Maha Beach, for example, you can see the American Cemetery, which to be honest is not as spectacular, because we live very close to the American World War II cemetery here in Cambridge. I mean, East Anglia is where pretty much all of the Allied forces were based. And therefore I have been to the American World War II cemeteries, and they all look spectacularly the same. I mean, that's the whole point, the uniformity. It's really calming for me, because every grave is the same. It's just green field with either a cross or you have a Star of David. But when you go to France, it looks exactly the same as here in Cambridge. But I would really recommend you see the Normandy landing sites, because they've done so much work for the tourists and for bringing the children there. It was great. So yeah, this is my part 1 of the book haul. I think the first books I will read, well, I'm kind of slowly going through the Bayeux ones. I've read half of them on the way. I would love to read the Monet books next, because I'd love to go back there. It's just that good. So yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Let me know if you've been to France, if you have similar feelings, and if you have seen Mont Saint-Michel in particular and the Monet garden. Yeah, see you guys. Bye.